We're just waiting until time to start. Two minutes. Okay. So this is the Birds of a Feather session. I'm Cheryl Alvarado, the moderator for this session. This Birds of a Feather session is about IT remote work and the challenges that we've all faced in um, this kind of new environment we've been working in the past month or so. I'm going to go ahead and just open this up. You're all muted at the moment. If you have something you'd like to say or a question you'd like to ask the others, just unmute yourself and then please mute yourself back when you're done talking. If it gets to be a little bit too noisy, then you might have to do this a little bit different way. But for now, I'm just going to open it up. Go ahead and let's get started. If you're trying to unmute yourself and you can't do it, click the yes button.
Hi, this is Matt Carver from Kansas State University's Polytechnic campus. I'd be curious to hear if other people have had discussions about the continuation of remote work or hybrid work after the pandemic.
This is Diane Graves at Emporia State, and I can share a little bit of the discussions that we've had in our IT department. We came home, if you want to say, on March 18th, and I'll just say that I'm a director. I've commuted for I don't know how many years, and I've worked at Emporia State the last 10 years. So this was like my dreamland, my holy grail. And I was very nervous because I'm a director and I just didn't think that I could direct from home. But as it turned out, everything, can you still hear me? Because something just happened on my screen.
Yep.
Okay, cool. But as it turned out, everything worked I came home, hooked everything up, and life was good from the get-go. The only glitch that I've had, and I know you didn't ask this question, I'm wordy, I'll get to your answer. But the only glitch that I've had is downloading large data sets through SQL Developer. I use a mobile hotspot, if you can believe that, and all my connectivity is really very well, except I can't download large data sets. I'll work on that if this becomes a long-term plan. So what our IT has told us is that things are going to happen probably at a slow pace to return. In IT, of course, there's a lot of different roles, and I'm data management, so I am not physically needed on campus. And there are those that you deal with hardware and software and one-on-one involvement, and those people will be probably required to come back in the fall. But I was told, you know what, I probably won't even see the campus in the fall. So I think it's going to be like a phased return for our campus, and I'm fine with that. I mean, and it may be even, it may go on even longer than fall for some people who are not required to be on campus. So that's my windy response. Sorry.
Thanks.
Does anyone else have any comment about whether or not the work from home will be continued at your location?
I comment, we've had several conversations. This is Matt again, that we have a lot of people that enjoy it, that found the transition very easy. We have a lot of, especially faculty that still want to be on campus, and certainly we have programs that require uh, physical presence. We teach aviation, so we have to fly planes, and we have engineering equipment that requires hands-on. But there are a lot of efficiencies gained, I think, from uh, at least hybrid work. Of course, IT has hardware that they support, um, but I'm curious about scaling it up long term. I've been on calls with other universities around the country, and many of them have already implemented solutions like this and have more of a flex space for employees versus fixed offices, and work on hardware issues by appointment. And I know some of our institutions in Kansas also have those happening now. But I'm curious if this is a pivot point for how we work in general, now that everybody's getting to sample it.
That's my opinion. I think it is a pivot point. I think it'll be hybrid. And that's based not only on how we're doing things, and we're certainly not experts, but also based on things that I read, you know, that this has opened up. Uh, like in my case, like I said, you know, I just wasn't sure that I could be a director or manager from home remotely. But I think across the country, I think people are discovering that indeed it can be done. And I'm also reading that productivity is a lot better from home for certain um, areas.
Have there been any particular challenges that you've come across? I know we've all experienced things like low bandwidth in rural areas, um, and just the issues of getting tech out to people who aren't on campus. Are there any other issues that you see, things that have been a problem or struggles that you've had to work through?
Well, we haven't particularly seen it yet, but I'm concerned, you know, if everybody is practicing good data hygiene uh, and not downloading the university data to their personal machine uh, to work on it. This is Tony from Salina campus.
We have the same protocols for security and privacy in place that we did before. We're using our work computers at home, work laptops. We are as cautious, if not, no, we're as cautious, the same level of cautiousness. We go through all the approvals. We get all the approvals before we disseminate any information, any data.
I admire the technical capabilities of your staff.
I do too. My team is amazing. I have a guy that works in Wichita, and we're, of course, our office is in Emporia. So there for a while, he was commuting, you know, before all this, he was commuting over an hour. I was commuting an hour. The third person prefers to be in the offices and actually has had kind of a tough time adjusting to the isolation. He's a little bit younger than us though, and he wants that, you know, me, hey, I just want to go home and stay at my house. But their technical abilities are fantastic, and our staff in the office, you know, our colleagues are just, if we need anything, which I got to say we really haven't. We were set up just like we needed to be from day one, and so, you know, but we were already communicating via electronic means, and so this was just a simple step, additional step up the ladder. So have your campuses, anybody talked about when they're returning? And I know there's another session going on right now, and I talked to one of my colleagues that's participating in it. And the first topic of conversation apparently was masks. They're going to be required, and in some cases they're already being used, on campuses. So the transition back, I think, is going to be, the next step. How close we can sit together and the masks. But who knows when that'll be, of course.
I'm curious about telephone technology. That's kind of my role at Emporia State University. I know from our perspective, we've got kind of a multi-tiered approach. There are some people who are using Cisco Jabber soft phone for telephone from home, from their laptop. We've got some other people who don't really communicate via phone very much, and they're relying on email or Microsoft Teams chat. Just kind of wondering how some of the rest of you are handling communication.
This is Fred Darko at
Go
Kansas
ahead, Fred.
City. We're having our help desk has a unique setup now. We had initially started going back into Hale Library when everyone was sent home, and instead we're having to do the work from home. The system that we currently use is Avaya, which is an older system, but we're able to manage, and we were managing up to 26 students rotating in and out of their shifts by using an EC500 and assigning them as people switched out on their shifts. So that allowed us to manage 3 primary shifts and then occasional students popping in and out for high flow times. Now that does require a bit of work. We had to forward the phones to the students' cell phones, which is not the best scenario, but it's the best way we can continue providing assistance. And then we also did the same thing for our operators on campus, where we would have a specific vector for the operators' primary contact number for campus so they could route calls. And we were able to, through Avaya, route the call to the individual students. And then in the evening, we would have to turn all of the phones off and take people out of the queues. But that's allowed us to manage, since we were sent home in March, to be able to keep moving forward and keep business moving for campus, so they always have had the help desk available. We had little, if any, interruption in being able to provide the service to campus. So it's been a challenge, but it also worked out just fine. We're hoping to be back on campus sometime in July or early August, depending on how things turn out.
And to piggyback off Fred a little bit, we're doing all this, but we all stay on Zoom. And as a matter of fact, when people come on to take the shifts, that's where they report to us, Zoom. And we found Zoom to be a useful tool. We are going to move to Teams eventually, like everybody else. But the one thing we have when we go back in is that we won't all be in the same location. And we were wondering how we were going to deal with this us being in different locations, kind of being splintered out across campus. And we found out that through this, that using Zoom and having all our second tier there on the Zoom and coming in and out helps the help desk and helps us resolve tickets faster.
Any other challenges that that anybody has come across? I know at ESU we initially had some difficulty just scaling up. We didn't have enough VPN connections, licenses. We were like in a mad rush to create soft phone accounts for people that didn't have them. We scaled up additional virtual machines for remote access, some of those things. I think that rush is mostly over now, but what particular things did some of the rest of you have issues with, some of the things that just hit you head on at the beginning?
And that was one of the good things that you just mentioned, was students having access to software that they had in labs and classrooms and being able to work with that. I think we since have went to lab stats, and so they're able to log into those and get into them now. But that was one of our initial challenges, is how was we going to provide software to them that was licensed that they don't have access to now because they can't come on campus.
You guys hear me?
You're very faint.
Okay. Maybe this is better. I don't know. We just a FYI, we've presented on this before at Check in the past, but the issue that came up with accessing software off campus legally, license wise by students, we have used a product called Software 2 for several years. And when we were pretty sure things were going to be moved to online learning, we began working with faculty to package more and more lab software and put it out there. So that has been a lifesaver for us. If anyone hasn't used that product, it's pretty fascinating and awesome. It's called Software 2, and they have a product called Apps Anywhere. So we were able to package the software, put it on a server. Students could log in with their credentials and download the software and use it on their own machines. Same for faculty. We had some VDI that we used instead of Software 2, but for the most part, that's what we've used, and it's been very successful.
Does anyone else have any particular method other than your learning management platform, but just for providing those applications to students?
Well, this is Len at Washburn. We were just in the process of standing up a VDI environment, and we had to finish that in a hurry. So that's what we're doing now, is we're providing VDI for faculty and staff with all the lab software loaded. So that's kind of how we're accomplishing that.
Doing some AWS AppStream.
Are there any IT specific challenges? I mean, challenges that are specific to IT workers when it comes to working from home that any of you have run across?
Other than instances where I need to interface with a staff or faculty to do hardware repair, then it seems to work better from home.
Seems more demanding at home.
Demanding in what way?
I don't know. It just seems like you're always available. Somebody where to get you that you actually, like I said, I feel like I work more at home, more efficient as well.
I notice sometimes people ignore the in a meeting indicators on Teams.
This is Greg from Fort Hays State University. One issue that we had noticed after moving from home, which we had overall done very smoothly, was that we started noticing things we were lacking in our monitoring for our physical environments where we weren't there to see anything. Apparently there had been a small amount of moisture in the server room that we didn't get alerts on, that somebody happened to be there and noticed.
That's a good point, and I can think of several things in my environment where we don't necessarily have electronic monitoring in place. For example, if we have a power outage, I would get an alert from our UPS, but I don't get alerts from the generators to know from that perspective whether they've started up or not.
We created a email list here a couple years ago with the SMS addresses of my phone, a couple others, to get around an issue with our room alerts, environmental monitoring for the server room, so that it sends it out through an email, but it comes in as a text message on my phone.
For us on this particular instance, it's an old air handler that it was providing an audible beep, but there was no mechanism built in for sending out an email or notification like that.
Imagine we'll see a lot more resources in the cloud for reasons just like that. If we do a hybrid structure, things where we're not as dependent on a physical location. We were seeing things track that way anyway, with software as a service, but it might accelerate some of it.
Along those same lines, have you all seen a heightened interest from administration on disaster recovery and business continuity since all of this started?
Short answer is yes. We already had a business continuity plan in place, but that saved us from having to come up with that in a hurry. But now we're trying to put a plan in place on how to get back.
Do you anticipate a higher priority being placed on disaster recovery and business continuity in the future? I know at least at ESU, it's been a little bit difficult to prioritize funding for that in the past.
Yeah, that's definitely an ongoing discussion. We were fortunate enough to have backups in the cloud and that sort of thing, and that was kind of a poor man's DR. But we were also in the process of building another DR site and working on that when this happened. So I think we'll get a little more attention and funding for that now because of the situation.
Well, if anybody wants to learn anything, just look at us up at K-State with Hale Library. We learned a lot from that.
Yeah, we often use that as a model for our discussions to go, hey, you know, this could really happen. So, but again, those discussions were already going on before COVID hit, and we were fortunate enough to have, you know, at least some preliminary plans on some of these things that we could carry forward. So, like I said, we were just in the process of firing up VDI, and we're timed it almost perfectly because almost the week that we had to send everybody away, we had it up and running. So, but if we hadn't already purchased the equipment and it hadn't already been in place, we would have really been behind the 8 ball. So I guess the rule of thumb there is don't wait for something to happen. You've got to get people to wake up that, you know, that you could be hit by a meteor, but nobody thinks that they will. But you have to put these plans in place ahead of time, because when something does happen, it's too late.
I'm of the school of thought that you build your DR, then you build everything else.
Which is exactly the opposite of what everybody does. But that's exactly right.
Usually it takes an event like this to get everybody else to wake up so that they're willing to fund and help make something happen now.
So how many of you anticipate that this will change the working environment going forward post-pandemic, in terms of more people working from home and that being a normal thing, or some hybrid work from home some days and work from the office other days? And what kind of issues and challenges do you see coming up as a result of that?
Well, from my perspective, they've now had several weeks and learned that they don't have to run office buildings as big and as much. So they figured out ways to save money on budget. And the only issue that I see that's a real issue is now I have to pay for all my connectivity out of my own pocket.
This is Nancy with Fort Hays State University. And a lot of our employees do drive from another town around the area. And I myself live about 15 minutes away. So I have not been buying gas and driving back and forth and saving time. I have not heard anything as far as plans, but I would love to be able to have the opportunity to work from home part-time, or, maybe even full-time, depending on what kind of options would be available. But I mean, it's just something that I have not heard any discussion yet.
I think before you can have anything take off, it really has to be a campus movement from the IT perspective, because obviously we support those users in what medium they participate in at work. So if parts of them are staying on campus, it does complicate things, and that's where I spend a lot of my time wondering how you roll out something like this that we all seem to think is beneficial. But if the majority of our communities don't think that, then it becomes a lot more challenging to try to implement.
I agree that a hybrid working environment does pose additional challenges for troubleshooting issues. I know, like, from a personal perspective, I'm in charge of the phone system at Emporia State, and we have got a brand new flock of soft phone users, sometimes working from home, sometimes working in the office, and sometimes trying to run the smartphone app from a remote desktop instead of from their local machine, and wondering why nobody can hear them. So it does tend to complicate things. There are more questions that you have to ask when you're troubleshooting things.
And I think, this is Nancy again, I think a lot of it depends on each person's positions, the type of work they do, how much they are needed in meetings. And it would have to be a campus-wide policy.
Like, many of us have those policies out there, but it's the implementation and expectation from your constituents that you support. I think it becomes more challenging if it's a mixed, if not everybody supports it, or not enough people support it. And I think we have yet to see how that takes off with outside of IT, at least for K-State.
I'm curious what some of you, what the rest of you have in place in terms of policy for equipment and services like internet connectivity or extra monitors. I know a lot of people have taken a laptop home, but at the office they have a desk phone and they have 2 or 3 monitors, nice big monitors. And if this all takes off and people are more likely to work from home, or especially in a hybrid environment, you don't necessarily want people having to haul big monitors back and forth. Especially maybe for those of you who have been doing work from home longer, how do you address those kinds of things? Are the employees expected to pay for all of their internet connectivity? Is that just part of the job expectation, or are they expected to provide their own monitors and so forth from home? How does that work for some of you that have been doing this longer?
Well, reviewing our policy recently, well, we haven't been doing this long term. I have been looking into it to try to be prepared. it seems like, at least for our policy, it's by the agreement with the employer slash employee, or with the two together, that they come to an understanding and they both sign off on it, not a specific outline for specific tool sets, which I think is wise, because there's varying degrees of equipment that folks use. And I think listening to other universities that have already implemented things like this that are years deep into it, having flexible space, maybe, if you already have the same type of docking stations and things available, that a flexible space might have equipment in it that an employee can come and sit down at and use external peripherals and work in a ergonomic way, or just working more flexibly in general, not tied to a particular office or particular office space. Treat it like travel. If you're traveling, sometimes you have spaces and at conferences that you can work in and use peripherals, and sometimes you work at a couch in a lobby.
Now, we haven't been doing this for a long time, but we have been doing a lot of talking about it. And our discussions have kind of revolved around the idea that the university provides one set of equipment, and whether that goes into your office or that goes home with you, that's what you're allotted, one set of equipment. And as for the internet connectivity, we haven't had a lot of discussion on that, but it's my perspective that you're responsible for providing your own access to work, just like you're responsible for providing your own transportation to work.
The only issue with that is, though, it's not always equal. I'll give you an example. Where I live right now, they're working on getting us fiber connected, but it's not done yet. So I'm paying $115 a month for a 25 megabit connection, whereas other people have gigabit connections and they're paying less than $50. So it's not really value added there.
I think certainly you can't make everything the same for everybody. Just as I'm thinking about it out loud, that people also make choices like like Cheryl, that commutes a long distance already. For us to strive to find a win-win in those agreements for institution and the employee, I think having open conversations about what everybody's willing to facilitate is always helpful, no matter what you're talking about.
Well, this is Larry from K-State. I would say that the open floor plan and shared workspace areas made a lot of sense before COVID, but now during the COVID situation, which may be with us for a while, it doesn't make good sense to try to share an environment like that. I mean, one of the things that people are doing is setting up partitions and so forth to try to block people off if they have to work in the same office space. So it kind of adds an extra twist to the whole mess, basically.
And by no means am I complaining about what's going on. I am very happy to have a job and things like that. But I just think that if we're going to have those expectations for people, and not just myself, that we should at least come to a common ground. A certain amount of things will be provided or not provided. I mean, if you go into the job knowing that you are going to have all that stuff, then that's a different thing than you're into it several years, then all of a sudden you have to provide everything.
Yeah, and speaking of other things not being, I know VPN has been an issue for us, and not because of our end, it's because of dealing with the ISPs, and every ISP doesn't allow that VPN, or you have to go get into poke holes in so it will work or something. So the VPN has been an issue for us. It doesn't work the same for everybody. Depends on who their ISP is.
To come back to a point somebody made earlier about internet connectivity being sort of correlating to your commute to work, and you have to provide your own transportation to work, or you have to provide your own connectivity to work, and whether that's fair and equal or not. I think once we get past this pandemic situation, and people are not forced to work from home, for those people who don't have or don't care to have a high-speed internet at home, working from work is going to be an option still. We've got 2 more minutes. I'm going to open this up. Does anybody have any other topic that they'd like to talk about? Okay, really quickly then, I want to thank all of you for coming to CHEC virtually this year and for participating. We do have, I have heard that some people are having some difficulty with the Watch Now link on the schedule. Sometimes it doesn't work. I just want to let you know, if you come across that situation, just refresh that page and try again. And I hope everyone has a wonderful conference. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.